Hey gang, welcome back. It's I, DrBossKey, and today I thought I would share with you some of the updates that we've got going for the tutorial and do a little Shmup creator how-to tips and tricks at the same time. Why don't we hop into it? All right. So first, let me just show you the goods. So after time, things change, your game changes, and when you want to teach things, often part of those changes will not be they won't be accurate anymore. So you have to kind of come back and do a rinse and wash over things. So and in doing that, we basically took the opportunity because our buddy over at Lazy Devs, Christian, basically pointed out that some things didn't make sense. So let me just show you what we got going on now. That would be the wrong spot. 1 second. All right, cool.
Captain's log. I'm placing the Veil Piercer starship on autopilot to get my hands dirty collecting monster soul bits.
We chose intentionally to keep the voice line going even though we've killed the dialogue at that point. We updated
weapon system, mid-weapon. Rapid fire, great for dealing with low health enemies.
We increased the
bottom weapon, power shot, great for dealing with high health enemies. Notice how much faster this weapon bay destroys these communication transmissions.
So we increased these. We increased the health for the dialogue, so they take a little bit longer to kill. But we didn't want them to die because we're using basically enemies as dialogues. So we have the ability to script into their states, whether they're alive or dead. I'll go over this in a bit here. So, but also you may or may not have noticed by now. So when the dialogue appears, we also now bring up a little arrow graphic indicator. I'll show you how we did this. And then we have a little bit of helper text here just to reinforce what the player is trying to learn. This is the very first time players are coming to the game and you're trying to associate the terminology and the gameplay aspects and the interactions all in the same kind of vein. So, and you can see here.
Auto weapon, utility. Fires automatically when firing your top or bottom weapons.
Okay.
Super weapon, butt saver.
Super weapon.
Cancels enemy bullets and makes you invulnerable. Try it out now.
I just did, thanks. Okay, so the cool part is that we added basically a little bit of on-screen helper text to reinforce where the weapon portals are, what they're called, and this text elements and helper graphics, the arrow, go away basically when the dialogue is completed. So and I'll just do kind of a ram shot through all of this and just briefly touch on things. So it's not super advanced in terms of tutorials, but I thought I'd show you what we've got going on. Okay, so we added a chunk of logic here, and the logic here is basically, here's just our little helper to remind us that it's the weapon arrow logic. So now this is one of the little things I like to do. I like to set up a trigger condition. I like it to set to enemies HP is less than 1. It's not connected to anything, so it just keeps it from rendering in the world. And that gives us our little, it's like poor man's code commenting, right? And then so what we did here is we basically set up a trigger. Maybe I should go the other way. Well, we'll do it this way. Okay, so just logic-wise, we'll cover first, and I'll go into the other bits. So basically what we did here is we set up a trigger condition, and this trigger stays activated in this case. Connected enemy state is alive. Again, we are using our dialogues as enemies, so it's kind of a bool check in that respect. And then we have a timer because we didn't want it to appear in our particular case immediately. We wanted at least the language to seep in a little bit, the response of the dialogue and the text because it's all new and the player's trying to digest that. And then about 1.2 seconds later, we bring up the helper graphic with the reinforcement text near the weapon portal. And then at that point, what happens is that we have a fake bool enemy here. That's just, this is our way of checking whether it's true or false. So then that gets spawned and that bool enemy is awake. And this works because you can have enemies that are awake inside the camera field and not be shown. Now there's some new cool stuff coming online where Here you can see this tag that I've got here. It's called invisible. So you could technically have enemies without collision hanging out now in your main camera space. So, but in our case, and I think it's in the current version of the engine. I'm on a preview copy. So, but regardless, that's why it's set up here in the corner. And then what we do from there is we go, cool, enemy is now awake. We have another trigger logic, which then says connected enemy state is all alive. And then we do a couple things from here. So what we do is then we shuckle on over to essentially these effects logic indicators. And we've created, essentially, we're using the particle system. And the cool part about these effects objects is that you can put them in their own layer. So we have them at our highest layer. So they're on top of everything here, which we're just calling the UI layer. But also you can attach them, which you can see it's already attached here. So I can detach, and you can attach effects emitters to your player character, which is super important because we really wanted to, it wasn't possible when we first made the tutorial. It's possible now because of some cool functionality added to the engine. And because of this, now you can have the arrow graphic, and you can have the text, essentially, as I'm just treating them as particles, follow the player. So it reinforces that context. And then just for the sake of showing everything that I've done here. So here, I basically have 3 types of text. And all this is just a little sprite with transparency. And I just have text here. And basically, I have a little bit increased size. The life is set to 3 seconds. Feels pretty good in this particular case. On the emitter settings, we went with 5 particles here because I wanted to have kind of a pulsing up a little bit more and a fading out, which you can see, kind of a flashing. You can adjust as you see fit. The emission is set to constant and infinite, and the emission rate is set to 1. And we've done the repeat delay min-max. Is just every half second we add another, we basically spawn another particle, and because they have transparency, they layer on top of each other, which actually helps the particle itself get brighter. And then the last thing we did over here is we decided to add a color over life, and it basically fades out. So color over life for the duration of the particle, then that's why it has part of fade out. And ultimately, when we kill the particle, it'll continue and then fade out completely. It looks a little bit nicer in my opinion. And then we set the effect to 2D. And I think that was it for those guys. Yep. Okay. And then the other one that we did is we have the tutorial arrow itself. And I'll show you that guy in a sec here. Arrow guide. All right, cool. So a little bit more chonky on the pixels. I just don't want to spend all the extra texture memory for having a super like nice clean line. So what's being done here is this is actually a sprite sheet. And you'll see why I've knocked it down to 512 by 512, but it's basically 8 columns and 8 rows. And that's why we get this really nice. You could probably do this with the particle system if you did it just right. I was being a little bit lazy here, but I do like that it does a little bit of scale down and out. And it just has kind of a nice little flow to it. So, and what I did is I set the duration to, is the particle life. Particle life min max is 3 seconds here. Size, you fudge it to figure out which looks good for you. Nothing changed on the scale. I didn't because the fade out is part of the animation of the sprite sheet in this case. I don't have any color over life, so you can just do that there. And then the other little thing that I did here is I wanted arrows to be up and down, and because I could easily copy 2 assets, but if you don't have to copy an extra asset, then you save a little bit of on disk space, a tiny bit of video memory in that particular case, because you don't have to have 2 objects in the world and in the game engine. So what I did is I set the range start to -90 degrees and range end to the same, and that then let me have the arrow up, and then I just made a copy of the particle system, and all I did is change it to +90 and range in +90, and so you can see it flips between the 2. So easy peasy, and I think that was it there. Everything else was basically the same as with the images, and in this case we only needed 1 particle. And it was fine in this particular case. I don't even have to have a mission rate of 3. I can put that to 1 and be fine too. No big deal. Okay. And so now what happens is that the enemy wakes up, that logic triggers, and then after that timer, and then we show essentially the 2 particle systems. And then what happens is that so then we have essentially another which I just, it's always a good idea if you can add a little bit of names to help your triggers. It'll help you with debugging later. I promise. So we have basically another trigger condition that is looking for the enemy state, same enemy, which is the dialogue here. And then in this case, connected enemy entity state is dead. And so once that happens, then we have a kill condition here. In our case, we didn't want, I don't have score items anyways, no explosions, but it's just a good habit to have these. So we basically have a kill condition. And that kill condition then destroys your bool enemy. And that takes us to then the last piece here, right? Which is here in that trigger condition in which when we activate the helper guide and we activate the text, we basically have it set to switch mode. So all this means is that when the enemy is alive and it says, hey, wake up. And so we can use one trigger, which is switch mode, connected to entity state is alive. And then when that enemy is killed, then the trigger logic says, okay, cool, send a signal to switch this off. So it only works in switch mode. So that's the other piece there. And then what we did is we basically just did the same thing for each of the dialogues, and that's the whole logic itself. So hopefully that's helpful for people to kind of see what the workflow process. There are other ways you could do this, of course. The particle system, of course, is one of the reasons why, because I wanted it to follow along with the player. But if you don't need that, the text object system will work just fine for you. And you also get all the nice, like, fancy fade ups and transition bits. There are other things you can do. That's a slightly different thing. So if you made it this far, thank you very much. And to everyone else, we'll see you next time.